The United States Environmental Protection Agency has determined that some re-education is required in the area of bulk pesticide management, including repackaging and refilling containers. A 5-part series is being developed to support the EPA's Container and Containment Rule, last revised in 2010. Each unit of the 5-part series will outline the steps required for pesticide repackagers to comply with EPA requirements. It is important to note that a repackager is sometimes referred to as a refiller, but the EPA considers the step of transferring a pesticide from one container to another as repackaging, and this term will be used throughout the training modules. This is part 1 of the 5-part series and will outline documents required of pesticide repackage establishments. In addition, it will review the following 4 EPA requirements: repack contracts, written descriptions of acceptable containers, including stationary and portable refillable containers, product-specific container cleaning instructions, refill record keeping. When you transfer pesticides from one container to another for sale or distribution, you are repackaging. Pesticide registrants can allow repacking of their registered pesticide products provided certain conditions are met. Pesticide repacking is considered production within the EPA rules and can only be done at a location that is registered with the EPA as a producing establishment, or by a registered repackaging establishment at the site of a user who intends to use or apply the product. This option also includes repackaging on the end user's farm. Most commonly, retailers and distributors repack pesticides from bulk tanks into refillable containers to sell or for distribution to local growers. Repackaging cannot result in a change or alteration of the pesticide formulation. To authorize this repacking, and to allow the repackager to use and apply the registrant's label, a repack contract is required between the registrant and the repack location. The repack contract is between a pesticide registrant and a specific refill location. If there are changes, and this includes a name change, ownership change, physical address, or other changes, a new contract must be established. The contract will identify the authorized refill location, the pesticide products that can be repackaged, and may include an expiration date or be an evergreen contract. Both the repackage site and the registrant are required to maintain a copy of the repack contract. These copies need to be available for inspection by EPA or state regulatory officials. Before selling or distributing a pesticide in a refillable container, the repackager must place a copy of the registrant's label on the container. The label applied must have the net contents placed into the package and the repackager's EPA establishment number added to the label. Most pesticides registered with the EPA that are repackaged into refillable containers and released for shipment must be in compliance with the previously detailed requirements. Products that are not subject to all of these EPA requirements include manufacturing use products, plant-incorporated protectants, and certain antimicrobial products. EPA repackaging regulations require the registrant to develop a written description of acceptable containers and provide it to a repackager before or at the same time the pesticide is distributed or sold to the repackager. Registrants have the option to include the description of acceptable containers in the repackaging contract, and many registrants do this. Registrants must identify acceptable containers for each pesticide by specifying materials of construction that are compatible with the pesticide formulation and comply with the following documents. The description of acceptable portable refillable containers must indicate that they comply with the U.S. Department of Transportation Hazardous Materials Regulations. Containers smaller than a 119-gallon capacity must meet the performance standards of U.S. Department of Transportation Packing Group 3 requirements. Containers with capacity between 119 and 330 gallons will also be tested and authorized as UN-approved containers or will meet the definition of a U.S. Department of Transportation portable tank. Registrants can develop their own acceptable container descriptions. Each opening of a PRC, other than a vent, must have a one-way valve, a tamper-evident device, or both. The description of acceptable stationary refillable containers must indicate that each stationary pesticide container must be resistant to extreme changes in temperature and constructed of materials that are adequately thick to not fail and that are resistant to corrosion, puncture, or cracking. Be capable of withstanding all operating stresses to which the container may be subjected in the course of operations. Be equipped with a vent or other device designed to relieve excess pressure, prevent losses by evaporation, and exclude precipitation. Not be equipped with external sight gauges, and be equipped with a shutoff valve which is capable of being locked closed on each connection below the normal liquid level. Each refillable container, portable and stationary, must be marked in a durable and clearly visible manner with a serial number or other identifying code that will distinguish the individual container from all other containers. EPA does not regulate service containers. To qualify as a service container, the container must be used exclusively for the purpose of applying the pesticide and must be part of the pesticide transfer by the applicator from the storage container to the container that is intended exclusively for application purposes. Containers that are used to store, sell, or distribute pesticides are not service containers. A service container is a temporary container used to hold, store, or transport a pesticide product or mixture that is in the possession of the applicator. It's the registrant's responsibility to develop and provide to repackagers a residue removal procedure that describes how to remove pesticide residue from refillable containers before refilling. It's then the repackager's responsibility to follow these directions when cleaning portable refillable containers. The cleaning procedure must be adequate to ensure that the composition of the pesticide placed into a refillable container does not differ from its confidential statement of formula. It is also recommended that the container be cleaned as soon as possible after emptying. Whenever possible, dedicate containers to a single product or similar product as defined by the product's registrant. Refilling a PRC across product categories, such as using a container that previously held an herbicide for distribution of a fungicide, requires a more advanced cleaning process and may not be approved by the registrant. If the tamper-evident devices and/or one-way valves are not intact, containers must be cleaned in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions prior to being refilled. Containers must also be cleaned prior to disposal or recycling. Registrants are also responsible for developing and providing to repackagers a residue removal procedure that describes how to remove pesticide residue from stationary bulk pesticide containers before refilling. This is usually part of the repackaging contract from the registrant. Repackagers must keep certain records. These records must be furnished and made available for inspection and copying. Informational records are provided by the registrant and must be maintained at the refilling location for the current operating year and for 3 years after that. The informational records are repackaging contract with the product registrant, residue removal procedure, also known as cleaning instructions, and description of acceptable containers. Repackaging records must be generated each time a product is repackaged into a refillable container for distribution or sale and must be maintained for at least 3 years after the date of repackaging. The repackaging records include the EPA registration number of the pesticide, the date of repackaging, and the serial number or other identifying code of the pesticide container. Each repackaging facility must submit a report to US EPA by March 1st on the pesticides repackaged at that establishment the previous year. The report must contain the name and address of the establishment, the amount of each pesticide repackaged that year, the amount of each pesticide sold or distributed that year, and the amount of each pesticide estimated to be repackaged during the current year. The repackaging facility must keep a written log showing the product name, EPA registration number, amounts per batch, and batch identification of all pesticides repackaged. All of the records must be product-specific. In other words, this information must be kept for each product distributed or sold in refillable containers. Many repackagers have developed checklists to document refilling activities. The following is an example of a repackager's checklist. This completes part 1 of the 5-part series.